industry leader, Mr. Hardip Singh Rai, CEO of Gas. I request him to come on stage. He will be speaking on the role of natural gas for the sustainable development of Madhya Pradesh. A huge round of applause for him, please.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. And thank you to all of our earlier speakers. I think time is sort of rushing ahead, so I'm going to cover a few topics relatively briefly. Really try and draw out some key themes. I think first of all, let me just tell you a little bit about ThinkGas. So we had our colleague earlier from PNGRB who talked a little bit about the way in which the government through the regulator had essentially was looking to increase the penetration of natural gas around the country by awarding CGDs or city gate distribution networks to various companies. We as ThinkGas, we operate in Madhya Pradesh. We are building and creating a city gas distribution network in Bhopal, Rajgarh and Shivpuri. Those three districts of Madhya Pradesh. We also have operations going on elsewhere in the country, in Punjab, in Bihar and in UP, and more recently in Himachal Pradesh. We are a relatively new company. We are essentially only 4 years old. We won the right to build a CGD network in Bhopal essentially 4 years ago. And in that time, we've got quite a large team here now in Bhopal. We have laid a lot of gas infrastructure. We have built some very, very significant gas infrastructure. And we're now getting to the stage where gas is now beginning to flow in the Bhopal and Rajgarh areas, also in Shivpuri. As of today, we have a very large LCNG facility in Bukroda, just outside of Bhopal, Bukroda industrial area. And it genuinely is a unique asset in India. It is a facility where we bring natural gas in liquid form by truck from the Indian coastline. We bring it into Bhopal. We gasify it. We warm it up, the liquid gas. We warm it up and put it into our pipeline, and we deliver it to customers, to commercial customers, to industrial customers, and also to CNG customers. As of today, we have I think we have about 40 CNG stations that we've set up in Madhya Pradesh, in areas in which we operate. Most of them are in and around Bhopal. We have been very much helped by the OMCs, where we have put up some of our dispensers inside OMC units, but we've also been helped very much by the local administration. A number of our stations have been set up in conjunction with the Bhopal Municipal Corporation, where they've had some land, they have helped us identify that land, we've installed some stations, and now we have CNG stations, ThinkGas branded CNG stations, at a number of locations around Bhopal. And those stations are now serving a large number of customers. So my colleagues will be able to tell me how many customers, but there's probably tens of thousands of customers who are being served every single day at our CNG stations. And that goes from a starting point 4 years ago, where frankly there were no CNG vehicles in Bhopal. And I think today, hello, how many CNG vehicles do we have in Bhopal? 40,000. 40,000 CNG vehicles in and around Bhopal, right? From a starting point of 0. Right? So we have made a very conscious effort to try and build that ecosystem. And the reason for doing that is really going back to the same points that my colleague made earlier, which is to do with reduction of pollution. I think the people who live in Bhopal know that they're very lucky. They live in a very beautiful and a very clean city as it is. But actually, there are still pollution levels. And by having CNG coming into the ecosystem, it does two things. One, it reduces the pollution levels in the environment. You're taking diesel and petrol vehicles and diesel and petrol fumes out of the market, and you're replacing them with much cleaner fuel, which produces much less pollution. The other thing it does is it actually increases the the money in the pocket of the user. And I remember we opened one new station down by the railway station about a year ago, about 1 year ago. And I remember, on the day of the inauguration, an auto had arrived for filling. It was just as we were doing the inauguration. And he remembered that a year before, when we had opened a previous station, I had handed over the key of some new autos to the auto driver. And he came and I asked him, what has been your experience in the last year of using CNG? And he says, look, even though gas prices have gone up, I have had more money in my pocket. I have had more money in my pocket, which means my daughter can now go to school. Right? She now has an education which previously I couldn't afford. Okay? So it has an impact on both society, and it has an impact on people's pockets, and it has an impact on pollution. So that's what we're doing. Okay? And we have had good support from the state government, we've had good support from the local government, we've had good support from the national government, but there's a lot more to do. And right now, our big focus is to increase our penetration of our network so we can start delivering gas to households. Right? As of today, most households in Bhopal are cooking on LPG. Yeah? LPG is very expensive for the country. There's a lot of incentives to be given to LPG users. It's also, frankly, hazardous from a user's point of view, in that you have to carry the big tank into the house, you have to have space for it. Bringing in an LPG cylinder also brings other things into the house, brings dirt, brings other people into the house to make that happen. It's also sometimes very difficult for the householders to actually manage the PNG, which is basically gas on tap. It's there 24/7. We've already started supplying that to a number of colonies in Bhopal, and we're looking to expand that penetration across the country. It's our motivation to get that done, and it's very much in line with what the government wants done. We believe it will have a huge impact, again, on society, and also on the environment. The other aspect I wanted to talk about was industry. Okay? Typically what we find is that a lot of industry is operating using LPG, sometimes dirty fuels, sometimes solid fuels, okay? Often very polluting fuels. And we, in the last year, as our network has expanded, have started to supply natural gas to both commercial establishments, so that's to restaurants, hospitals, and the like, as well as to a number of industries. The one thing that we see in Bhopal is the number of industries is probably less in and around Bhopal. It's probably less than it is in many other states. But it's very clear that there is a motivation from the government's point of view to bring more industry to Madhya Pradesh. I think the one thing that we all need to understand is that if India has an ambition to have more made in India and to have more manufacturing in India for the world, really take over from where China has left off. China, to some extent, is in decline, and the opportunity is there very much for India to step into those shoes, for India to become a manufacturing base to the world. Okay? More industry has to come to India. Okay? More development has to come to India. My colleague from PNGRB spoke earlier about how household incomes have to increase for the wealth and the growth of the country to increase. Okay? That means that energy has to increase, but that also means industry has to increase in India. Now, a lot of that industry, some of it will be domestic, but some of it will be global players who want to set up manufacturing bases inside India. It's very important to understand right now is that for global companies, there are a number of very important strategic objectives. One is they are looking to set up new manufacturing operations in areas which are cheaper manufacturing countries. Right? India is clearly a cheaper manufacturing country than, for example, the US or some of the more developed markets. There's a big opportunity for India there. The other thing is that a lot of these global companies, they are backed by global capital, right? By global pension funds. Those global investors are now very much focused on ESG. environmental, social governance. So all of the new capital which will come to back a global player, a global company who wants to set up in Madhya Pradesh, okay, will come from essentially investors who are focused on environmental, social governance issues. Okay? Let's put social and governance to one side, but let's focus on the environmental component. If a big company, let's just pick a name, let's say Ford Motor Company, right, wants to set up a plant somewhere in the world, and they have to go to their investors and say, we need capital, we want to deploy capital into country X, okay, to set up a new plant. Their investors will say, fantastic, you're reducing your costs, you're expanding your footprint globally. But the other question they'll ask is, how is that new factory that you're setting up, how is that going to be fueled? Okay? Because that impacts the environment. If the company, the global player says, I'm going to come to India and I'm going to set up my new plant and it's going to be fueled by coal, right? Or furnace oil, or some other dirty fuel. Okay? Many of those global investors will say, no, actually, don't do it. We don't want you to do that. You may be looking for getting growth in your business, but we don't want to increase the overall environmental burden on the globe, and that's our central focus. So, however, if an industry comes and says, actually, we are going to set up our new operations in country X, India, in Madhya Pradesh, because there is gas supply available, okay? And we can set up large production facilities, and we can manufacture using clean fuel, using gas, using green renewables. Okay? That is the sort of investment project that gets backing from the investors who count. Right? We always say, we're trying to attract investors. We say, we're trying to give them incentives, give them this incentive, give them that incentive. Right? The capital that counts, okay, is the capital that's going to fund them. That is very, very emotionally attached to the environment. Making sure that those companies can say, I'm coming to a location X, so to set up a new large manufacturing plant which will be fueled and the energy source will be clean. Okay? That is a very, very positive message for their investors. Investment will come. So I think Madhya Pradesh, given what my colleague said earlier, about having the ability to have lots of gas pipelines. We're laying, for example, 100 kilometre gas pipeline from Rajgarh district down to Bhopal, so gas can reach Bhopal. That's 100 kilometres of pipeline. Gas is available now in Bhopal and Rajgarh districts. Right? We are going through a number of industrial areas. Okay? Those areas should be marketed as areas where there is clean fuel available to global companies. Right? Global companies will come if they know there is clean fuel. And I think that we and the governments can work very actively together to market Madhya Pradesh as a gas economy. Right? It may be early days, right? But we have gas now available in much of Bhopal and Rajgarh, and also in other parts of Madhya Pradesh. So if you look at places like Narsinghar, there are industrial areas potentially there. We have gas coming close to Narsinghar. If a big manufacturing company would set up a plant there, provide employment to the local economy, okay, having gas available is something which would be a very, very important metric or threshold for a global company to look at when they think about setting up making their new investments. So, if nothing else is taken away from today, I would just like everyone to, from the government side, just to understand that what we are doing, fine, it's city gas distribution, it's focused on CNG, it's focused on households, but actually it's a very big piece of leverage for the state to attract investment. Okay? We are we're an FDI investor-backed company. We're headquartered out of Singapore, we're backed by global private equity players based out of the US primarily. We have already brought a lot of FDI to Bhopal and Rajgarh. Okay? But there's a lot more that can be done, a lot more that can come if you leverage on the work that we have done in conjunction with the work the government has done in increasing the level of gas penetration in the country. We're very excited about operating in Madhya Pradesh. I think we found it to be a really wonderful state in which to operate. And as I said, we operate in a number. I'm not going to say it's my favourite, but it's very much an excellent state in which we want to operate. None of the states are my favourite. Everywhere is my favourite. But we really enjoy operating in Madhya Pradesh. We love having the opportunity to bring clean fuel to the people of Bhopal and Rajkot. We're very, very happy about the teams that we've built here, the infrastructure that we've built here. Very proud of it, in fact. But we think we're at the beginning of a point at which we can use what we have done to really leverage the growth of the state. And we'd love to be part of that story. So I think with us working together with government, we can actually do very great things for the development, for the industrial development, for the social development, for the economic development of Madhya Pradesh. We're really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Hardip Singh Rai, CEO Thingas. I'm glad that the theme of this inaugural session was building partnership for green future through sustainable energy and clean air. And I'm glad that at the end of your speech, you talked about how government and industry can work together and so many things can be achieved together. And I think, again, the aim of this kind of knowledge sharing platform has been to bring those kind of communities together so that we all can brainstorm, we can talk about the new avenues of opportunities and we create a better future or a sustainable future. Thank you so much. I request Shivani to come on stage and hand over the plan to our esteemed guest, Mr. Hardip Singh Rai, CEO Thingas. A huge round of applause for him, please. Just to inform you that we're running short of time, so we're not going